So most people, when their receiving is limited, it's because their focus is narrow. When we increase our focus, we increase our ability to see new opportunities. In order for you to change your reality, you have to change. You have to be willing to let go of the old version of you in order to step into who it is you're becoming and who is a match for what it is that you want.
Hello and welcome to Make It Happen with Will Polston. I'm Will Polston. This is episode number 161, and in this episode I'm joined by Susie Ashworth. Susie Ashworth is a single mum of 3 children, high school dropout, Hay House author, international keynote speaker, multiple 7-figure success coach, and serial entrepreneur on a mission. She has worked with thousands of impact-driven leaders in business to create quantum shifts in their lives and their businesses over the last 10 years, and her vision is to raise the vibration of humanity through helping people consciously create freedom, joy, and abundance through sharing the secrets of how to tap into the frequency of infinite receiving. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in this episode. So Susie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Will. I'm excited to be here.
You and I both very much looking forward to this conversation and sharing your wisdom. And we were just talking offline because I met you 7 years ago. You were in the hometown of Chelmsford here. But what were you doing those 7 years ago?
Actually, I think it would have been 8 years ago because I was pregnant at the time and my daughter is going to be 8 in July. So it was, and I remember I was doing my TEDx talk and I kind of did almost a kind of fake simulation of me going into birth and what that might be like if I did it on stage. And it was all quite fun. I just remember being really, really focused on sharing the message that women could have calm and positive births. And she is Aluna, who was the baby that came. She is my third home birth, third water birth, third calm and positive birth experience. So yeah, that was me back then.
Well, 8 years ago. There we go. There we have it. So, I mean, that really would have made for quite a TEDx talk, wouldn't it? If you'd have actually given birth on that big red dot there, you know, I don't imagine they've had many of those in the world, but no, it didn't happen that instant. So life's changed quite a bit since then.
Yeah.
And most recently you've had your new book come out, Infinite Receiving, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. But for people that, maybe haven't watched your TEDx talk, or they're not too sort of aware of your background. Obviously, if you just heard a bit about you at the beginning of the show there, but I'm a huge advocate for law of attraction. I'm a big fan of manifesting, albeit I'm sort of not your typical woo person, but I definitely am. So when did you first come across this world, and what's the sort of the short story version that's got you up until this point now?
It's funny that you say that you're not the typical person because I would say that I am not the typical person either. I think that as a Black woman in our culture, the idea of being like, you can create your own reality and you can manifest whatever you want, contextually, that can be a really hard message for people to receive because particularly if you look at someone like my background, I was fostered at the age of 3 months old. I dropped out of school when I was 16. My foster mother passed away when I was 19. My foster father passed away when I was 23. There are lots of things on paper where I shouldn't be the person who is saying, you can do whatever you want and you can create whatever you want, and look at this for an example. And yet here I am. And I think that is probably why, for the people that I resonate with, all of those reasons are the reason that I resonate with them, is because I am probably not the typical person either. Having said that, the thing that opened me up to thinking maybe there is something quite special and unique about this universe is after my mum died, I went abroad and I went to live in Amsterdam, and I was living with somebody who is now still one of my bestest friends in the whole entire world. And she was one of those human beings that would say things like, "Oh God, my mobile phone's broken. I really need another mobile." And she was working in a coffee shop at the time. And 2 days after she would make the declaration that she needed a mobile, she wouldn't just have one, she wouldn't have two, but three people will have come in and said, "Oh my God, I've got a phone for you. Do you want it?" And
Mm,
I would observe things like that happening to her all the time. And I just wanted to know what the hell was going on. It's like, why is she so, in inverted commas, lucky? Why does she say this is what she wants and then she's able to get it? And she was the first person that introduced me to the idea of law of attraction and how our thoughts can support us in creating a reality that we want to live.
mm. Interesting. Was she conscious of it?
Yeah, she was. She actually gave me my first manifestation book, which was the Celestine prophecy.
Mm,
And at the time, I didn't even really understand what I was reading. I didn't quite get it. But on reflection, that was absolutely the gateway to all of the other books, all of the other things that I have read.
interesting. Yeah, because only this morning. So if she's listening to this, my friend Emma Mills, she posted on Instagram in the stories about the Neil Donald Walsh book Conversations with God. And said,
Oh,
does
love
does
that book.
anybody recommend it? And I said, yes, I do recommend it.
Yeah.
And also his book The God Solution, and also four other books. I shared the Surrender Experiment,
Mm.
Living Untethered, and The Untethered Soul, and the Celestine Prophecy. So literally this morning
Ah,
I shared that book with her, which is really funny, and she'll vouch for that if she's
yeah.
listening to this. But so that's really interesting, and there's a great film on it as well. I don't remember if I watched the film on YouTube screen to my TV or whether it was on Netflix, but yeah, there's a,
Right,
a great
okay.
film about it. And what did that book do for you? What did that open up?
I think that book is about synchronicity, right? And it's about serendipity and coincidence. And for me, that felt important for a couple of reasons. One, I needed and was looking for guidance. I was grieving at the time the death of my mother, and I wanted to hold on to the idea that there was something bigger out there, and there was something that perhaps if I was intentional that I could start to weave and create. And so it was connection to her, but also literally a doorway to an alternative reality. Because even though I was living in Amsterdam, I was essentially living in what was a glorified squat. My shower was in the hallway and it was like made of plastic bags for walls. It was really, there were mice running around. It really wasn't a great place. I was young, so I could handle it. But I think that there was also a desire to create something more. And
Mm,
so this book was potentially like, maybe this is the way that I could create something more.
okay. So for people that are new to this world, you've
Mm,
now written the book on it. Um, I know that there are four main pillars that you talk
mm,
about.
yeah.
Um, what are those four pillars, and how do they apply when it comes to manifestation and creation, whether that's wealth creation, love
Mhm.
creation, or anything else that somebody might want to bring more of into their life?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think what you just said is really important. This is really the foundation for creating anything across any area. And the first pillar that I always talk about is the pillar of infinite greatness, and knowing that you as a human being are literally a walking, talking miracle. And there is never going to be anybody else like you. There is never going to be, well, there was never anybody like you before. It's like your unique blueprint means something. And I think that we go through our lives diminishing ourselves in so many ways, shapes and forms. And often comparison, they say comparison is the thief of joy, but that's the thing that steals our ability to know that we are great. We look at the Beyoncés and the Taylor Swifts and the celebrities, and we're like, well, we're not that person. So what's my role?
Mm.
And, I work with people in business who, again, we have our own gurus in the online marketing world. And it's like, well, I'm not this person, or I'm not Stu McLaren, I'm not whoever the famous person is. And it's like the biggest breakthrough you will get, you will start to notice you are infinitely more magnetizing when you start owning the fact that your message is unique simply because it's coming out of your mouth. You asked me at the start of today, like, what will make this a really good conversation? And I was like, when you're present, it will help me to be even more present. I know that there are a million manifestation books out there. There are a million people talking about how you can create the life that you want to create. But there is only one Susie Ashworth, and there is only one person who can say it with my tone, my frequency, the way that I have said it in this book. And if I show up knowing that, rather than thinking, oh, are people going to be thinking, should I get Roxy Nafusi's book, or should I be getting Neil Donald Walsh, or should I be listening to Esther Hicks? If I can show up knowing that I am worthy of this space, I know that that will resonate with one human being.
Mm.
And that is very, very powerful, because if it resonates with one, it's likely that it will resonate with another.
It's amazing, isn't it, that that deserve level can have such an impact, people feeling worthy and deserving of whatever it is that they're looking to do. I know you also talk a lot about aligning inner beliefs with
Mm.
action, and look, there's a very famous book, it's The Secret. It was the first personal
Mm.
development book that I ever read, that
Okay.
lots of people have the perception that it doesn't talk about action, but it does.
Mm.
But I can understand why people would think that way. But what I'm really keen to know for the people listening to this is, okay, well, know your infinite greatness.
Yeah.
That it's all well and good you saying that, Susie, but what are the practical things that people can do listening to this today that can start to take that step to actually really feeling that?
Well, one great question. And I think that I talk in the book about the 1 degree shift. For me, knowing my self worth has happened over a lifetime. When I was 14, 15, 16, my parents lived in the smallest bungalow. They drove a Skoda, which, if you're in the UK back then, it wasn't a cool car. There were lots of things where I felt different, and rather than celebrating my differences, I tried to bury them. I tried to assimilate. I tried to create a facade of greatness, a facade of
Mm,
confidence. And everybody will know this experience of, you put the mask on. So the mask might be smiling, but inside you are cringing. Inside you are feeling small, even if on the outside you sound big or you look big. And so what we are looking to do is to create we're talking about authenticity, to create a match between what you are externally showing and what you are internally showing. And that starts with internal conversations. So, what would I choose for me if I knew that it was safe?
mm,
What would I say if I knew that if I was safe to say what it is that I wanted to say? What would I say? If I was safe is one of the most powerful kind of, whether it's a prefix or a suffix, it doesn't matter where you use it, but choosing to know that you can be safe, irrespective of how somebody responds to you, is very, very empowering. So by starting to ask yourself that question, listening for the answer, once you have the answer, this is where courage comes in. You
Mm.
then have to follow through, you have to take the action. And confidence comes from taking action. So the more small steps that you are willing to take, the more you are willing to ask yourself on a day-to-day basis, like, what would I do here if I wasn't worried that nobody was going to like me, if I wasn't worried that my parents were going to disown me, if I wasn't worried that the neighbor might think that I was rude, whatever it is, start asking yourself that question over and over and over again, and then start taking small steps in the direction of your truth.
Love that. Yeah, I think yes, that psychological safety and just even that question, it just removes the fear element, doesn't it? You know, it's essentially removing fear. What would you do if fear didn't exist?
Yeah.
And for so many people, you know, they're living in fear because the things that they would do, they're not doing
Mm-hmm.
because of that. So very interesting. So that's one of the four pillars. What would you
Yeah.
say is the second?
Can I just say something else just on the back of that? I say in the book that it's on the surface what I'm talking about, cracking the code to conscious wealth creation sounds fun. It sounds like, yeah, this is the kind of magical unicorn dust. But actually, what I am asking is a very courageous thing, because sometimes it genuinely isn't safe to say what it is that you want and to say what it is that you desire. Sometimes, if you have lived a life of martyrdom, if you have been the person who has given everything to everyone all of the time, and then all of a sudden you turn around and say, actually, I want to do something for me, that can upturn the entire apple cart.
Mm,
And it takes courage to say that you are willing to do that. So sometimes the fear that holds us back is imagined, and sometimes the fears that hold us back are valid. And the reason that I am asking you to be courageous anyway, or the thing that has driven me in my journey, is the value I put on the fact that we only get one shot at this. This is our one and only opportunity. And I think that, when I talk about my mum and her passing, it was the biggest tragedy, but it was the biggest gift, because
mm,
at 19, to lose your mum and be old enough to be consciously aware of what it means, what your own mortality means, what it means to have somebody who you loved so dearly just be gone. Like, I was given the gift of, this is what it means to live and this is what it means to die. And so, for all of those people who are holding back because it feels unsafe, I want to remind you, as morbid as it might sound, that you are going to die one day. So, how do you want to feel when you get to the end? You know?
mm. Yeah,
So, it's a big one.
yeah, it sure is. Um, So yeah, I'm interested to hear maybe one of the other pillars, and then I've got a few other questions I'm really keen to ask. But
Mm.
because it's such a big topic, and obviously we've only got so much time. But what would be another pillar? I mean, whilst they're all important, otherwise you wouldn't put them in, right?
Yeah.
But what's another pillar that's key in this process?
The pillar of infinite love. And this is probably the area that I have had to do the most work on and continue to do the most work on. I think that, again, for somebody like me, in the type of work that I do, I'm a coach, certified coaches. I come across as very extrovert. There's always been a big smile on my face, and it's always, people have always felt like I'm a warm human being. And again, whilst that isn't untrue, it wasn't the whole picture. And so I would associate being a kind hearted person, but I wasn't an open hearted person. And there
Mm,
is a huge difference when it comes to living your life as a kind-hearted person and living your life with an open heart. And I think that many people are living their lives with a closed heart.
So let's distinguish the differences between being
Mm,
kind-hearted and open-hearted.
yeah. Kind hope, kind-hearted is often outward facing. You care about people. You want people to win. You want to look after people. You are nurturing. Open-hearted is being willing to allow people into your heart. Open-hearted requires a level of vulnerability, because if you let people in, you are not in control of where they land or what they do. Being open-hearted means living your life, being willing to allow your heart to be smashed into 1,000 pieces.
Mm.
And for everybody who has had their heart broken once, what is the most natural thing in the world to want to do is to protect your heart. And if you have had your heart broken as a kid, often that self-protection mechanism that comes in place is something that you are not even aware of. It's just who you are. And for me, that was very much my story. My heart was broken precognition. And what that looked like in my life was that self-protection. My heart was like shielded, and then there were bars around the shield. It was like, you are not getting in. And it impacted every relationship that I had. It impacted the relationship that I had with my ex-husband. It impacted the relationship that I had with my kids. Now, of course, I love my kids. I love my kids more than anything in the whole entire world. But it is only through doing this work that I really learned how to soften and allow my heart to be softened and allow myself to be more vulnerable and more open to receiving the love that was available for me.
Mm. Did you find that by doing that, the fears that you had about having your heart broken and being hurt happened, or didn't?
I think it's an ongoing process. So, my husband and I, ex-husband, we separated. So my heart was broken during that separation. And I haven't had a long-term partner yet, although I am absolutely open to that. And going through the dating journey has been super interesting, because I can see all of the places where I'm like, oh, in protection mode, okay, you need to you got to let the bars down.
Mm.
With my kids, there is a different level of vulnerability. So it's like all of the love that I ever felt for them, but it feels so much more, which that can hurt,
Mm.
especially as they get older. It's like, and they're becoming their own humans. And my eldest is 13 years old. He is about to start embarking on all of the things that happen when you're 13 and you're growing up and going to become a man. Like, when I think about that, that feels so vulnerable. My heart feels so tender. And the dance that we're in is really me allowing him to go through that journey, when all I want to do is like keep him locked in his room so he can't
Mm.
so can't escape. And so all of that feels deeply, deeply tender and vulnerable.
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. Um, I know that a lot of people will associate manifestation with some degree of wealth and
Mm.
sort of abundance in that respect. I very intentionally earlier said creating whatever you want, because for some
Yes.
people manifestation is creating health. For some people it's manifesting the ideal partner, whatever that might be. But for a lot of people, it's wealth, because wealth becomes a resource that opens up freedoms and experiences that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise have, and it
Mm.
enables them to remove themselves from the practicalities of I need to do this to get X.
Yeah.
I know you talk about tapping into more money, tapping into
Mm.
more abundance. What do you mean by that?
So I like to distinguish money and wealth. So in the book, I talk about the wealth trifecta, and I believe that you can't be truly wealthy unless you have all three areas of the wealth trifecta. So, leverageable wealth, which is money, which is what we're talking about now, intrinsic wealth, which is your connection to yourself, your sense of safety, spirit, if you believe in that, and then experiential wealth, like your actual experience of life, like your enjoyment, your going out, your real life experience. And leverageable wealth is the money piece. And I think that often what is interesting is that people will say, I need to work on money in order to give me experiential wealth. And once I've got the money, then I can do the inner work. And I'm like, no, that it doesn't need to work like that. Actually, you can work on receiving more financially whilst you are doing the inner work and you are living your life. So it's that conversation around, can I have it all? And my answer is absolutely yes, but you just can't do it all.
Mm.
And this is where one of the other pillars comes in, is the infinite pillar of support. And what I find is that when you work on knowing your greatness, allowing yourself to be deeply supported. Again, that can be in multiple areas, and you work on the pillar of love. All of the material stuff, which is the final pillar, the pillar of infinite co creation, all of that comes to you so much more easily because you are so much more magnetic when you are your most authentic self, when you are full. I talk about in the book being full of yourself. The more full of yourself you are, the more you know yourself, the more you love yourself, the more you accept yourself, the more you know your worthiness, the more you know your deservingness, the easier it becomes for you to manifest all of the material things that you want.
Mm.
And weirdly, the less important the material stuff becomes, because often people are wanting the money because they think that the money is going to give them the safety that they want. Now, outside of your basic needs of like being able to put food on the table, being able to pay your mortgage, and arguably, even there are some people, and the biggest example of this is Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. He is the epitome of somebody who is able to find an internal sense of safety in the most horrific of circumstances. And
Mm.
when you understand that you are the generator of your own safety, you will not even look to money to be the thing that you think that you need, it's outside of you, to create what it is that you want. And that, to me, is true wealth. Because from that place, like I say, it becomes even easier to manifest all of the material, including the money, but you don't need it. It's a desire. And that distinction, very, very powerful when it comes to manifesting, because the minute that you need something to happen, you're on the frequency of lack, you're on the
Mm.
frequency of not having it the minute that you need it. And so if like attracts like, and how we feel impacts what we create, if you're in that needy feeling, all you are going to create is more need, more lack, more not having it.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
want to create the full feeling, the fullness, and that's what the book does.
Yeah, it's that like you said, there's a difference, the desire versus the need. One's necessity, it's coming from that, or like the place of scarcity. Something I should probably ask uh way earlier in the episode. What's your definition of manifesting?
Oh, no one's ever asked me that before. And what's interesting is that I use the word manifesting because I think that it's the word that most people are familiar with. But I prefer the word receiving. And for
Mm.
me, which hence the book's called Infinite
Yeah, I was just
Receiving.
thinking, yeah.
And the reason that I have gone with receiving, or what receiving means to me, is an increase in awareness. So most people, when their receiving is limited, it's because their focus is narrow. And when we increase our focus, we increase our ability to see new opportunities. And so the more we increase our focus, the easier it is for us to be able to receive infinitely, because from the work that you have done, everything that we want is already here. The minute we have the thought, in the quantum field, it's already there. So then it's just our job to be an energetic match to it, to just align to it.
I think one of the things I really try, and so I keep coming back towards the practical element
Yes.
of this, is because for me, I do try and make that connection. I can go to the woo woo element, and
Yeah.
I get that, but I also like to make the rubber hit the road and keep it real in my
Yeah.
term. So the practical examples, and I think that for me is one of the key elements. Is that so? There's a process that I take people through called creating a North Star, and then create a North Star trajectory. And I get people to read it weekly, which is basically like a whole
Yes.
roadmap of their goals. And the reason I do that is there's a part of the brain called the reticular activating
Yes.
system, which is the part of the brain that enables you to focus. So by them reading it every week, it's doing two things. One, it's making them be aware of what they are doing and reflecting, have I actually done that? Oh no, I forgot about that. Yeah, I need to be taking some action towards that. But secondly, it's opening their mind to see the opportunities as and when they come up, because there's so much that's happening in any given day. We've all done it, whether it's a car or a handbag or an item of clothing, we think nobody's got it, you go and get it, and all of a sudden you see it everywhere, right?
Yes.
And that's that part, which is why I really really like that as a sort of a distinction, a definition of, yes, seeing it as more receiving, but actually, in order to receive, part of that is actually just having your eyes open
Yeah.
to seeing that it's there, right?
Yeah.
That's the part. So then you can just essentially reach out and grab it and ask and do whatever it is that needs to be done.
Yeah. 100%. Love that.
What would you say the most common challenges are? So for people that want to receive and they've been trying to receive, quote unquote, they might call it manifest or whatever else. What are the most common challenges that the average person's facing that you think there's some sort of quick wins to overcome?
Well, outside of fear, which is the number one thing, fear of actually getting what it is that you want, because in order for you to change your reality, you have to change. You know, you have to be willing to let go of the old version of you in order to step into who it is you're becoming and who is a match for what it is that you want. And that freaks people out, you
Mm,
know? So fear is the biggest thing. And, the quick win for that is trusting that everything is always working out for you,
mm,
trusting that it gets to get better and better and better and better, trusting that every single failure is going to lead you to a success if you keep going, because you're going to keep learning, you're going to develop more wisdom, you are going to evolve, you know and so that is how you deal with the fear of I don't know. It's like it's okay.
mm.
That's
Yeah.
the first thing. And then I think that there was something that was on the tip of my tongue. There's the being allowed, so the worthiness and the deservingness. It's just that's a decision. You know, I had to decide that I was going to become a seven figure and then a multiple seven figure coach. Like I had to make the decision. Most people fanny about. Do you know what I mean? They're like, oh,
Mm,
maybe, kind of. It's like once you are definitive, then you can start honoring the roadmap that you take people through. But
mm,
until you're definitive, you'll never follow through when it comes to the action piece, which,
yeah.
in my opinion, is the most important piece.
Interesting. So you just saying it, and I happen to know that I've got this because I was showing somebody the other day. I'm hoping that I can get this, find this with ease. Otherwise, yeah. So I have daily affirmations that I read to myself, and I have done for years and years and years and years. and I have them as a little bookmarker in a book called The Daily Stoic, which I read one page a day
Yeah.
of. And normally, at least once a year, I'll update it. I'll add one, or I'll remove one, or I'll tweak
Yeah.
one by a word or so. And I'm really particular about the language that I use. And I found these because I was trying to find an example of these. Are some of my old ones. This one was first written in on the 2nd of May 2020, and it the number one that I read at the time was "I'm lovable, I'm enough, I'm worthy and deserving of love, money, and success." Right, and that was
Mm.
that. But then what was interesting was that nearly 6 months later, or just over 6 months later, on the 3rd of November 2020, I added another one above it, which was "I deserve everything I want now."
Mm.
And I did that because I found myself subconsciously, and then did a bit of work, realizing that I was saying to myself, "Oh no, you don't deserve that yet." And
Yeah.
it was so interesting because and people listening to this thinking, "Oh my God, Will, why?" Like, there's a difference between "I deserve everything I want now" versus "I get everything I want now." It doesn't mean I'm getting it, but the fact that I deserve it, there isn't this reason. It's a bit like when you say to people, "Well, what does your kid need to do in order to deserve love?" Well, nothing. They don't need to do
Nothing.
anything. They're
Yeah.
just deserving of it no matter what. And it was really interesting, and still to this day, 4 years later, that's still the number one. That's the number one affirmation of what's about a dozen that I read each day, around that, because I found myself 4 years ago catching myself going, "Oh no, you don't deserve that yet."
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's look at readdressing that.
Yeah, I really like that. And you saying that actually has reminded me of another thing that blocks people, and that's timelines. Often people set themselves, and it's really, and again, this whole conversation is very nuanced. As an individual, I come from a sales background. I love a deadline, give me 30 days, and I love the hustle. And when it comes to being an energetic match, manifesting your dreams, receiving what it is that you desire, that you're not actually in control of the timeline. And what I find is people like set themselves a goal to hit something in 30 days. And when it doesn't look like it's happening at day 14, they're kind of like, oh, it's out of the window, it's not happening. And so their behavior reverts back to somebody who is not going to get the thing. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So for me, with my clients, I like to talk about long-term visions and big goals that you cannot hit really within 30 days, totally unrealistic. But having this big vision that is not attached to your self-worth. So what you just said there about I'm deserving now, it's like I have a vision that I will run an 8-figure company one day. And I am working on being a match for that today. The decisions that I make in my company, the meetings that I have with my team, the language that I have, I'm always asking myself, is this in alignment with us having an 8-figure company? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Now, do I think it's going to happen next year? The reality is no. I don't think it's going to happen next year. If I did think it was going to happen next year, again, that would change the decisions that I am making today. So there's still work that I need to do, and it's fine. The point is that when I give myself a really, really big goal and I allow that to be the filter for who I'm being today, I will inadvertently collapse time around all of the other milestones to hitting that 10 million
Mm,
because I'm acting in alignment with 10 million rather than 3 million or 5 million or all of the other numbers beforehand. And so I still get to share incredible quantum leap stories that are related to the 10 million, even if I never get to it, because I'm stretching who it is that I desire to be and how I'm showing up in alignment with that big vision. For me, that's way more fun than playing around like with the little things where I'm like, universe, is it here yet? It's like it doesn't work like that. And that timeline, that short timeline, often puts you in the vibration of scarcity. So, and we've already talked
mm.
about that.
Yeah, interesting. So I literally wrote a book called North Star Thinking, which is that, it's about having the goal that's so big in life that you
Yeah.
accept you're never going to achieve it. You detach from the outcome, you focus on the process, align your identity with who that's being, and all of those elements. So I completely get that.
Yeah.
One thing I'm interested in your opinion on. So, um, this I think is interesting. Is that you said the term, or you said that in reality, maybe next year I'm not going to achieve that, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever it was that you said. Um, Now, let's say that somebody has got their big North Star, they've got
Yeah.
a 20-year vision of the home they want to visualize.
Yeah.
But if they were thinking about that, it's, let's say someone, maybe it is a bit of extreme for probably the people that listen to this, but I can't imagine there's that many people that are listening to this right now. Maybe there's some that are squatting with plastic bags on the wall,
Yeah.
as you mentioned. But let's say they're in a less than desirable home that they want to be in,
Yeah.
but they perceive like they've got the dream that's 20 years out from now, whatever that might look like. But then they think in their mind, there's maybe 2 or 3 homes in between that's going to get them there. What do they focus on? What do they visualize each year? Do they visualize the 20-year version, or do they
Mm.
visualize the one that's a year out or 5 years out? What advice would you give to people in that instance?
I love this question. So for me, I look at the 20-year version. It's like you can have that in your mind's eye. The thing that you actually focus on is how it feels. How do you feel when you're in the 20-year version? How do you act? How do you look at your partner? How do you look at your kids? How do you arrange your office? And you start feeling like that today. You have the visual in your mind, but the feeling piece is all about the now and how much of that you can bring into who you be now and how you look at the world now. And for me, that has the same impact of collapsing time. And I think what is most important about this feeling piece, it becomes the instant manifestation. This is the example that you've given there is an extreme example because we're talking about environment, but generally speaking, the things that we want to create in life are about us feeling a certain way about ourselves, about what it is that we've created, about what it is that we're doing. So the minute we know that we can bring that feeling into the now, we've already created it.
Completely agree. Yeah, I literally say any goal that you ever set is about one thing, and that's changing the way you feel. When you can change the way you feel in any given moment, right? So it is, yeah, it's really interesting. We're aligned in that respect for sure. Um, what's one question you wish more people would ask about infinite receiving?
Oh, that's a really good question. What is one question I think I would love everybody to ask? Um, why is it important to you? I think people ask me what it is, what it means, but why is this work my life's mission?
Mm,
That's the question. And the answer is that it's not about helping people get more stuff. Like, I want you to get more stuff. I want you to have whatever you want, but this book isn't about that, actually. That's the cherry on top of the cake. This book, I believe, if people really understood the pillars at the deepest level, and it's why I say in the book, like, read it once, read it twice, read it 50 times. Like, I still read it every single day, and I have written the book. When you understand the pillars at the deepest level, it changes how much you love, it changes how you see not only yourself, but everybody else in this world. And if people went through life understanding their greatness, you think about gangs of kids that have grown up without parents or feeling abandoned, unseen, unheard. If they knew their greatness, what would it do to those gangs?
mm,
You know, if people understood that they weren't on their own, that they did not need to feel isolated, and that they were fully supported, that there was a place where they could get support universally and practically, which I believe that is true for everybody right now. It would change people dying on their own. If people knew what it was to live life vulnerably with their hearts open, like, it would change every single conversation that you have with every single human being that you ever fucking meet. And if people knew that they could create what it is that they want to create, that they don't need to steal, they don't need to be jealous, they don't need to covet. Like, if you can understand those 4 principles and live those 4 principles, that is the answer to world peace. This is not a book about manifestation. It is a book about how to create peace, live by peace, and be peaceful. And that is why this book needs to be in as many hands as possible, because I genuinely believe that it can change things.
Amazing. Well, Suzy, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. If people are listening to this and thinking, wow, I need to find out more about this book, I need to find out more about Suzy, where can they find you? Where can they get the book? Please let us know.
Thank you. You can get the book anywhere they sell books. So Amazon is a favorite, but literally anywhere. I love to hang out on Instagram, Susie_Ashworth. My website is susieashworth.com. And for your listeners, I am going to gift them 14 complimentary days in my Infinite Receivers Members Club. So if they go to susieashworth.com/will, that will give them special access to come and play with me.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And what we'll do is we'll put that in the show notes. We'll put all those links in the show notes, so then people can just head straight to wherever it is to get the book or to do the program or your website, and they can join there. So, Suzy, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. It's been great to have you sharing your wisdom on infinite receiving. And for everybody that's been listening, until next time, make it happen. Thank you for listening to Make It Happen with Will Polston. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share it with anybody that you think could benefit from it, and also make sure that you hit subscribe so that you get to get the new episodes as soon as they're released.